to security analysis. The focus this week is on Kabul, the Kabul airport, where on Thursday there was a terror attack, suicide bombers, and it is estimated that perhaps as many as 90 people have been killed. May I add that this is an estimate. This number could go up. And of them, it has been confirmed that 13 of those who died are US military personnel and one from the NATO, which is perhaps UK. The largest number of those who've been killed and injured tragically are the Afghan nationals who were trying to flee from the airport, flee into the airport and from there out of the country. And at this point, the finger of suspicion points to the ISISK, the Islamic State, and its Afghan variant. The Taliban has also condemned this terror attack, but in many ways, it was like a slow motion tragedy that was foretold. Because if you recall the sequence of events from the 15th of August, when the Taliban took over Kabul, and the way in which the Afghan nationals and the foreign citizens had to be evacuated, the numbers, the visuals, I think all of this was pointing to an attack of this nature. And the intelligence agencies of different countries had also, I think, cautioned their respective governments and military officials about this, but the worst has happened. What will happen in the course of the next few days, weeks, months? To discuss this and place it in context, I have great pleasure in introducing and welcoming two of our domain experts for this show. Ms. Nirupama Subramanian, who is currently the resident editor of the Indian Express in Mumbai. Prior to that, she was in Islamabad as a correspondent for the Hindu. And I recall meeting her there, and her own water table, her understanding of events in Afghanistan, Pakistan is very, very, I would say, distinctive. And I will request Nirupama to talk to us not only about the Pakistan-Afghanistan dynamic, but also about the Islamic State and the Taliban, the Al-Qaeda, and the whole terror ecosystem that is, again, so specific to South Asia. Welcome, Nirupama.
Thank you, Commodore Bhaskar.
We also have with us Air Vice Marshal Manmohan Bahadur, formerly the additional DG of the Center for Air Power Studies. Manmohan is a very distinguished helicopter pilot of the Indian Air Force, and he was also the Assistant Chief of Air Staff at Air Headquarters, where he was looking after the transport and helicopters of the service and the Air Force, under which many of the evacuation operational tasking of the Indian Air Force has been looked after. Welcome, Air Vice Marshal Bahadur, to this particular program.
Thank you, sir.
Let me turn to you first, Manmohan, if I may. Looking at the Kabul airport and the numbers and whatever has happened on Thursday and what could happen over the course of the next few days, could you just take our viewers through the scale of the challenge of the human evacuation, of the numbers involved, the tactical constraints? We saw that almost, I would say, scary picture of a US military aircraft trying to take off with people clinging to its undercarriage. Manmohan?
Yes, sir. Actually, now we can divide the problem in a way in two parts. Basically, because of the 31st August deadline that is coming up. One is presently between now and 31st. The crowd, the mela which is there actually in a way of people wanting to come out. And we've seen those visuals, especially even after the bomb blast, the suicide blast happened. So the guarding of the runway and the premises would be even stricter, restricting the flow of people. So that increases the human, the tragedy magnitude, because everybody knows there's just 2 or 3 days left to go. So you can imagine the pressures on the guards as people try to push themselves inside. That's number one. Number two, the aircraft would now be wary of the fact that they themselves could be targeted. As the Americans and the others withdraw in the next 3-4 days' time, it's my gut feeling, because otherwise, why would a suicide blast take place and kill people? That is just to convey the help to the world, the helplessness of a superpower, and that we are or they are great, the people who've done this. So the threat level is only going to increase in the next 3-4 days. That's the first part. The second part, and so the country is trying to withdraw their citizens, and especially the Americans. They would like to pump in as many aircraft there. But they also have to take out their people, because 31st August, the Americans are supposed to leave. Now, withdrawal is a task, is an operation, as you know, sir, which is as challenging, if not more challenging, than an attack. And that has to be really coordinated, because you are withdrawing your arms. You're not wanting to fire back because you're withdrawing, and you are possibly sitting ducks at that time. So what I foresee is, as this drawdown happens, we can, I foresee that there would be a lot of air activity over Kabul. Americans, air power, I think, would come in. The drones, etc., would already be there. But there would be offensive firepower available on call, on short call, to ensure that as the withdrawal happens, they are not hit again. So these are two aspects: people wanting to come out, as many as they can, increasing the pressure, and secondly, the pressures on the Americans to withdraw in an orderly manner with no more casualties.
I'll come to you on this, Manmohan, particularly about the actual final exit of the Americans on August 31st, because as you said, they could become the equivalent of sitting ducks, when their entire military capability is in the aircraft. So what kind of surveillance and air power will have to be brought? What kind of coordination is required with the Taliban? But in a moment, let me turn to Ms. Nirupama Subramanian now. Nirupama, can you try and give us a sense about the attack itself? It's been described as 2 separate suicide attacks. And the Taliban, of course, has distanced itself from the attacks. They've condemned it. And the suspicion is about the ISIS-K. What is your own assessment or take about the nature of the attack, and what is it that the perpetrators were trying to convey? Nirupama?
Thank you. I'll try and answer those questions. So there are many curious things about this, this twin attack that took place at the airport. One is, of course, that we have to keep in mind that there was a huge crush at the airport. There were masses of people trying to leave, and the Taliban were also trying to get them to leave. In the middle of this, there is intel warning from American intelligence agencies and other intelligence agencies that there is going to be an IS attack. And people are being warned, please leave, please leave. There's going to be an imminent bombing here. There's going to be an imminent attack by IS. It is very precise and almost real time in that sense, because those warnings were coming late into the afternoon, even hours or minutes before it actually happened. So it was, in that sense, very precise information. And I think one thing that, if it was really the IS, then what they have managed to convey is more, I would say, Marshal Manmohan just said about, rubbing the noses of the Americans in the ground. But I think it was a kind of they had probably a bigger target group. They had Afghan civilians in mind, they had Taliban in mind, they had the Americans in mind. So it was, in a sense, a message to the whole world that, look, we are present in Afghanistan, and we are not the defeated force that you think we are. That is at one level. But I also have to say that the IS itself is an amalgamation of many, many groups. In IS Khorasan especially, which is, Khorasan is that, it is that the ancient, it is a medieval term for the Islamic Empire. And so the IS Khorasan, which is based in the Afghan region, was thought to be a defeated force, but what it has managed to do is put out this message that we are here. But look at it this way: the Taliban now, when the whole world was thinking about the Taliban as oppressors of these people who are, who have taken over this country by force, who are oppressing their people, look at it this way: they have come out as if they are more civilized than the IS. So it has kind of, I would say, served their purpose in a manner of speaking.
But can I just interrupt you here very briefly? Again, this is, I'm distilling some of the comments that have come on social media and amongst the professional Afghan watchers and those who track terrorism.
Yeah.
Suppose it is not the IS. At the moment, it is conjecture. Even as we speak, I have not seen any credible claim by the IS. So my query, and this is more a devil's advocate kind of query, if it is not the Islamic State, is it possible that it is another group of action that is inimical to the Taliban? For instance, the Al-Qaeda. Have they any presence in Afghanistan now, in Kabul in particular, to be able to carry out this kind of suicide attack? So that's conjecture, and I'm just asking you to think about this.
At this point, everybody is only guessing. But I can say that the IS itself is such an umbrella for so many groups. It's supposed to be having friendly relations with the Haqqanis.
Yeah.
It has LET cadres in it. It has various foreign fighters within its ranks. So it's a kind of, it's a,
at the moment, it's flux over there.
Yeah, it's a guessing game. But there is what it is. If it's not the IS, I would say, it could be the Al-Qaeda, because the Taliban do have links with the Al-Qaeda. A UN report as recently as March this year said the Taliban are still in touch with the Al-Qaeda. So there is that possibility. But as somebody said, an American analyst I was reading the other day said that Afghanistan is now the Las Vegas of terrorist groups. It's
everyone is over there and having a shot. But anyway, what I'll do is, Manmohan, you want to come in on this, on the whole question of, if it is not the IS, who could it possibly be who wanted to either target the Americans, the Afghans, the foreign nationals, who actually carried out this suicide attack in such an indiscriminate way? Manmohan?
I actually agree with Nirupama, because, people wanting to show their presence, number one, we exist. And this is against the Taliban. So it is slightly undermining the Taliban too.
Yeah.
So who could it be who would like to establish itself in that area, other than another terrorist group? It cannot be, to my understanding, and somebody else. If you want to run your imagination wild, could it be somebody being triggered by Islamabad to make sure that they have a handle on the Taliban? I don't know. But time only will tell if that is a possibility, to keep Taliban in its place, so that Taliban is is controlled in some form by its basic umbrella body, the ISI or whatever. So that could be one deviation from what Nirupama just said before. But I personally feel it's got to be one of those terrorist groups who obviously been put into action with a bigger game plan right now. And with 4 days to go, we need to keep our fingers crossed.
Can I just...
one thing which... Sorry, go ahead, Nirupama, please go ahead.
So a lot of our intelligence information has been in the last a couple of years that IS itself does not have the sophistication to carry out attacks in urban Afghanistan, which we have seen them claiming, or those attacks have been attributed to them, to the IS over the last 2 years in Kabul, in Jalalabad. They've carried out very sophisticated attacks, and our intelligence inputs are that these are that the IS is, I mean, our intelligence agencies believe that IS is actually a proxy of it is a creation of Pakistan. All this whole amalgam of groups is a creation of Pakistan, and it gives deniability to attacks that would have otherwise been attributed to the Haqqani group or to the Taliban itself. So there is in the Indian security establishment, there is this thought already that it could be that the IS is a Pakistan creation.
Proxy, yeah.
And this is also mirrored by what Amrullah Saleh and NDS officials in the deposed government of Afghanistan have constantly been saying, that this is the Pakistan hand. If you recall, there was a Gurdwara attack in Kabul last year.
Correct.
After that, they caught the head at that the head of the IS, whose name is Aslam Faruqi. He's a former LET fighter. He joined ISIS in Syria, and then he moved to Afghanistan. So, I mean, that seemed to kind of tie in with the fact that there are LET people within elements, fighters within this group.
No, but I think this is an important point you made, because I did see a tweet this morning by Mr. Amrullah Saleh, who asserts that he is the de facto president now that Mr. Ghani is gone. And he's also a former intelligence chief. And he used the word evidence, that evidence that we have been able to put together points to the IS. But I'll leave this here for now. Manmohan, I want you to comment on one particular tactical aspect, which is that when you look at the scale of the evacuation and the number of aircraft that are currently there in Kabul airport, which is under the US military's control, and they are managing the airspace, clearly, whoever the perpetrator of this attack is concerned, they have not targeted any of the aircraft. So my specific query to you is, with the amount of ordnance that is now available in Afghanistan, in Kabul in particular, especially in that space between Kabul and Bagram, the Bagram airbase, which has been handed over, have the US aircraft, and I presume the US is the main target, have they become more vulnerable to any kind of attack by any group, any perpetrator who actually wants to use that as a point of vulnerability? Manmohan?
Yes, the point is all this evacuation is happening with a tacit understanding. If you recollect, just 3 days back, 2 days back, the CIA chief met the Taliban. Now,
Mr. Burns, William Burns had gone there, yeah.
That's right. He had gone and met the Taliban. So obviously there is a tacit understanding. And in fact, now the statements coming out from Washington is clearly, I mean, they are not feeling shy of saying, we are discussing with them, we are interacting with them. So that is going on. So with these aircraft, when they come into land and take off, they are sitting ducks literally. I'm sure the Americans are not outside the perimeter so as to form an outside perimeter when the aircraft are low on the thresholds for the takeoff and the landing. So obviously, some system has been put in place not to target the American, not only the military aircraft, but also the civilian carriers which have now been drafted in, the 4 civilian carriers which have been drafted in by the Americans. So I feel now is that between now and the 31st, as the Americans leave, the question that arises is who guards the airfield till the time everybody is away? Think back, Turkey was supposed to send in people and take on the responsibility of Kabul. Would Istanbul be coming in? Would Turkey, Ankara be coming in to take charge of this so that the Americans withdraw? that is something that we need to keep our fingers on to keep checking whether who will guard the airfield. Because once the perimeter gets withdrawn, the Taliban will move in. And all it requires is one trigger-happy soldier to spoil everything. Hence, I feel there would be a force out there to protect the airfield till the time everybody is away. And then also, if there are civilians to be withdrawn, maybe, just a thought which came to my mind was that civilian aircraft would be permitted to come in. The American military would withdraw, but civilian aircraft would still come in to take back people who are to be withdrawn by the Americans. So that little distinction may come.
And again, let me just add here, I think some of the, I would say, traffic that I have picked up in terms of communication and messages is that at the moment, the focus is on Kabul. But there are a lot of foreign nationals who are in other parts of Afghanistan. Not all of them have been accounted for. And therefore, I think this is another kind of issue that would have to be addressed, as also those Afghan families which have been separated. Some have managed to go, some are still lying, have been left behind. So I think this is a big issue. But again, I'll quarantine this for now. Nirupama, I want to shift gears and go to another subject completely, which is in the last 24 hours, less than 24 hours since the attack, US President Joe Biden has said very sternly that whoever the perpetrators are, they would be hunted down. That's the word he used, hunted down. So my query to you really is, when you look at this entire, I would say, ecosystem of terror, which the Americans have been trying to deal with since October 2001, and the way in which it has morphed from the original Al-Qaeda and Bin Laden to all the variants we see now in West Asia, all the way down to South Asia, extending across Asia. Who is it that the US president is going to quote unquote hunt? Nirupama?
Yeah, that's a good question, Commodore, because I don't think there is, in a sense, a personality now.
Yeah.
Like Bin Laden was a personality, and they could always make that the objective of the 10 years or the 11 years that they hunted for him and they got him. So that was a huge achievement. Right now, this is a more ambiguous kind of reality, which is that you don't know who you're really fighting. And if you're going to do business with the Taliban, then how does that limit your ability to actually hunt down people where you need to hunt them down? So really, I think it's all a bit up in the air right now. This promise or this pledge that we will hunt down each one of them sounds a little like rhetoric at this point, because it's going to be a very big ask. But I believe that even the UN Security Council resolution, I think it's 1267, under which people are listed. If the Taliban regime is recognized by the Americans, if the European Union recognizes it, we saw a debate in the UN Human Rights Council where they were very shy about calling out the Taliban for all that it had done. So, and they also now, the Western nations are lining up to provide humanitarian aid. All this is conferring legitimacy on the Taliban. Once you do that, then you have to look at that list and say, are these people, are you going to still call them terrorists? Is that resolution still valid? And under what international law or under what auspices are you going to then go and hunt people down in another country? So it all brings into question various ambiguities. I mean, it's so ambiguous. I think he has said it, but I'm not sure how.
Yeah, I know. My sense also is that he had to say it because of domestic political compulsions, because he's on the ropes in more ways than one. Absolutely. But Manmohan, if I can turn to you on two issues. One, you're welcome to add to this particular issue. And along with this, I just want you to perhaps give us a little sense of your assessment about the kind of military inventory that the United States and the NATO forces are now going to leave behind. I want you to focus on the air power aspect, whether it's helicopters, fixed wing aircraft, or any other assets that who will use them, what will they do to the entire, I would say, military equation vis-a-vis air power in the region. So you can address both these in your own.
The first part, the political lodestone around his neck. What I feel is that the Taliban and the Pakistanis will extract their pound of flesh and possibly give links, indications, or where certain names, more famous names of the IS or others who are at the leadership level are hiding. Okay, and that would be a trade-off to get more legitimacy or aid or something. It's all behind the closed doors that would happen, so that the Americans are able to go and kill a few people and sort out the political mess that Joe Biden is in right now. It's a big problem for him. So that's what I feel, that in the next coming few days or weeks, a few killings will take place. Possibly the hints could come from Taliban and the Pakistanis, and those guys will draw something from the Americans. Now on the air power part, the only offensive power which the Afghanistan Air Force had were the Tucanos, about 24 or something like that, out of which 16 or so have been flown out to Uzbekistan. Presently, they are in Uzbekistan. There are some helicopters, Black Hawks also, which have gone, and some Mi-17s. So this is all that the Afghanistan inventory is as such. There may be the odd small transport aircraft, twin engine type. Now, to manage that, to service that, all the infrastructure is through the Americans. The Tucano is a Brazilian aircraft, Embraer. But the Brazilians and the engine is American, and all those things that happen. So the Americans have got a big handle on that, and I don't think they would permit, unless the Taliban they've already made a statement or some leaderships that we request all the neighboring countries to send back those aircraft to us. There will be a lot of pressure on the Uzbeks to send them back, and some have flown to the other countries around. Okay, to Iran also, I believe something has gone. So there's not much of air power there, but that would be substantially grounded for two reasons. One, who would fly them? And second, the maintenance part of it. Regarding the flying part, that's where the Pakistanis would like to sort of come into the good books again of the Taliban, into better books, if I can call it, by saying, okay, we'll train your pilots for the helicopters and things like that. Some people for that. That may happen. But in the near future, I don't think they have much as far as offensive power is concerned. Some helicopters may come up.
Thanks. Nirupama, I just want to now touch one final area, which is on the political and diplomatic dimension. With all that is happening, it's very messy, it's tragic, it's blood-soaked. How do you see the Chinese and the Russians in terms of their own orientation again? Meaning that they are both permanent members of the UN Security Council. You can see that they have been more empathetic to the Taliban than any of the other major powers, including India. And the other related question is the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which has terrorism, counterterrorism as the primary focus. They have been completely silent. So is there anything here that you're able to read the subtext of the Chinese-Russian positions? Nirupama?
Yes. So I think, I was very surprised that President Putin said the other day that, something, words to the effect, I can't recall the exact words, but words to the effect that militancy should not be allowed to take hold in Afghanistan again. And I thought it was a bit contradictory to the stand that Russia had taken all this while, arguing with the whole world, or canvassing with the whole world that, the Taliban is a changed creature. It was not so much China. I mean, China was still guarded in its statements, very, very circumspect. But Russia was out there. They were holding those meetings. They were bringing countries together to discuss the future of of Afghanistan, and with the Taliban present in the room. So it was very clear that the Russians really wanted the Taliban in Kabul. And but now I think they also like all nations, all realist nations, they also know that there could be a blowback to their own countries if this is not sorted out quickly. And so both Russia and China, I think in the coming days, you'll see them take some, I don't know if there will be proactive steps or not, but and whether it will be in the Security Council or in the SCO. Some people do believe that the SCO will now become the main forum for a discussion on Afghanistan, because it includes some of the main parties. It includes China, it includes Russia, it includes Pakistan, and it includes India as well. So there is a feeling that now, you know, Russia does want to pull in India into the discussion. But I think what is going to happen is they're going to be very careful about jumping into the mess. China, there were predictions earlier that, you know, the Chinese would be exulting about this, and now they're going to extend their Belt and Road Initiative into Afghanistan. I think the Chinese may wait and watch like the rest of the world, and may wait for its cues from Pakistan really also, and see if and when order prevails, how it may want to take itself to Afghanistan. And the Russians I think may initiate a discussion in the SCO on this. I
have to wait and watch. But Manmohan, you want to comment on this? We have a minute or so. Would you like to add anything to this particular aspect about the UN, SCO, you know, and the major powers? Manmohan?
If I can just stick to China, to the extent that they have a transactional way of doing things. And I don't think they would like to see their investment, not so much the monetary investment, but investment in terms of staying away from events happening in Afghanistan, to build goodwill with Taliban with respect to the mineral resources which are there. So just as the way they have exploited Africa for its natural resources, not caring for the environmental degradation, forests after forests having been cut, etc. I think we can see a repetition of that in Afghanistan, because Afghanistan requires money. It requires funds. Who will fund them? The Russians are tight. The West will not come so easily. China is the only source which can pump in money. And I feel we can expect China to come in a bigger way, and slowly from minerals and trade, they will get into not governance as such, but influence peddling is what I see.
Thank you. Let me thank my two guests, Air Vice Marshal Manmohan Bahadur and Ms. Nirupama Subramanian, for sharing their thoughts on really, I think, a very dynamic kind of issue, which is still unfolding as we speak. But at the end of the day, the tragedy of Thursday at the Kabul airport, where we had these two suicide attacks, and which resulted in the death of almost 90 people. We hope that this will not be repeated, or that there would be a surge in the violence, and that all these stakeholders, the major powers, the Taliban is also now a stakeholder, and the people of Afghanistan who have paid the heaviest price, that there would be some kind of attempt to return to a semblance of stability before other steps are considered. On that note, I think we will have to wait and watch, fingers crossed, and hope that the situation stabilizes sooner rather than later. Thank you for watching Security Analysis. We will be back. And once again, thanks to my two guests, Ms. Subramanian and Air Vice Marshal Manmohan.